Chris, on another issue, you've had a conversation with the head of the National Broadband Network.
That's right. Mike Quigley leads the company charged with the ambitious plan of building a $36 billion optical fibre network, so it's not surprising that he's past and present are being scrutinised. Recently he's been pursued over his knowledge of a bribery scandal that saw his old company, Alcatel, fined $137 million by the US Securities and Exchange Commission, even though there's no suggestion he was in any way involved. And the NBN's failure to find a single company willing to lay cables for the money on offer raises the spectre of cost blowouts. I spoke with Mike Quigley earlier and began by asking if he thought he should have raised the bribery case with the government when he was asked to run the NBN.
No, it didn't, Chris, and I'm not surprised that it didn't. This investigation was undertaken of the company's name was Alcatel, from events that took place in a period 2001 to 2004. An investigation was, in fact, initiated by Alcatel reporting to the authorities that there was a suspicion that two individuals, one in Costa Rica and one in France, had committed an illegal act. That investigation by the SEC, subsequent investigation, took about 5 years, and during that time the SEC spoke to quite a number of people inside Alcatel at the time, quite a number of the management team, but they never once contacted me or asked me any questions. And subsequently the issue was settled and Alcatel paid a fine, which is not unusual in those events because it had infringed the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. As I said, during that whole investigation of 5 years, I was never contacted and never questioned by the authorities.
And you didn't think that it was worthwhile mentioning in the course of the lead up to the NBN?
No, I really didn't think it was relevant at all. In fact, it was frankly ancient history. By the time I was talking to the folks in the NBN, the settlement had largely been taken place.
Now, will you be able to roll out all of your cable on budget?
I believe so.
But you're not certain?
Well, in a huge project such as this, there is an enormous amount that you buy and that you build, and we have probably completed now, I guess, close to 80 procurement processes quite successfully. And the last couple that we are doing are obviously the biggest ones around the construction, the actual labour to construct the bid. And as everybody knows, I think we suspended that process because we weren't satisfied that the costs were where they needed to be, and we started a new process. And I've made it quite clear, publicly quite clear, we won't build at any cost.
But you significantly underestimated what your costs were going to be, didn't you?
No, I wouldn't say we significantly underestimated.
Didn't you start with a business model that tried to shift all of the risk onto the builders and they're just not going to wear it?
Not at all. We had a set of assumptions in our business case which we thought were perfectly reasonable, and I'm still confident that we're going to end up in a place where we need to be to get this network built.
How is it that you could have 14 tenderers and not get one at a price that you thought was reasonable?
That's not unusual. From the inquiries I have made, it's not unusual that you end up in a situation when you have a big public infrastructure activity such as this. I'm confident we will end up with a successful partner for building the network.
How big was the distance between what you budgeted for and what they told you it would actually cost?
I'm not going to go into the actual dollar amounts.
Was it in the order of $7 billion?
No. It's frankly, I think any numbers that you hear floated have a very good chance of being incorrect. Once we've completed this process, it'll be clear whether we can get the network built or not at the cost we expect. And as I said, so far, of some close to 80 tenders that we've run, we've been more than happy with where we finished compared to our budget.
But clearly now, given what's happened, it's going to cost you more than you expected.
No, I wouldn't certainly agree with that. We have not finished this process yet, and as I've said repeatedly, we are looking after the taxpayers' funds. It would be very easy for me, by the way, just to sign up a number of companies at costs above where I think they should be. I won't do that.
But you're not going to meet your budget. You're not going to meet the budget that you set down at the moment unless you find someone. You couldn't find out of 14 companies, you couldn't find someone to do it for you. What makes you believe that you can now?
Because it's not over yet. We're still in the process, which is why I obviously won't talk about any specific numbers.
But it's slowing you down, and surely that's costing you money.
Well, there's a number of things that obviously aren't going as fast as we would like, the biggest of which, of course, is the deal that we are negotiating with Telstra, which was announced as a heads of agreement, and we are still working towards bringing that to finality.
What happens if your costs blow out?
We won't allow our costs to blow out.
But they might. This
is not one big bang, one-off project. It's not like building a Sydney Harbour Bridge or a desalination plant or a hydroelectric scheme. We are repeating over and over and over again the same modules, which means it's not a big surprise at the end. We will be able to track costs as we go.
And what about labour costs?
Labour costs are hard to predict, frankly. That's the one area which is the most difficult to predict, and clearly the events that took place this year in Queensland with the cyclones and the floods and the amount of rebuilding that needs to happen is going to have an impact.
And as you enter the marketplace where there are fewer and fewer labourers, labour costs will rise. So your costs will rise as this process continues. So it's not the same module over and over again. It'll be different modules in different times. And there is a time value to money.
That's assuming, of course, that we agree to variable costs over time. We may look at how to get a commitment for some level of fixed costs.
What happens if your costs blow out and your revenue doesn't meet the expectations that you have?
Well, I wouldn't accept that our costs will blow out. We simply won't allow our costs to blow out. Revenue is always one of the most difficult things for a company to predict, but if we complete the transaction with Telstra, we will be replacing the existing fixed-line copper network with a fibre network. And hence, if people in Australia are keen still to get these higher speeds that you can get with fibre, we expect to have a robust revenue
If
plan.
you don't make a return of 7%, does this project end up back on the government's books? You're a commercial company at the moment, but if you don't make a commercial return, does that mean that this then at some stage might go back onto the government's bottom line?
The question of what constitutes a commercial return is not a hard and fast line.
But it was in your McKinsey's report.
In our report of our corporate plan that we submitted to the government late last year, we predicted a model in which we would provide a 7% internal rate of return over the long term. That doesn't mean that that's the only, if you like, commercial return. And by the way, this project with a 7% internal rate of return, no private company would undertake. It's not a high enough rate of return for a private company to undertake it.
And if it falls below 7% to 5% or 4%, is there any point at which that triggers it going back onto the government's books because it's not then a commercial enterprise?
If we even saw that the internal rate of return was likely to decline, we would of course be informing our shareholders. That's an obligation we would have on an ongoing basis, and we will update our business plan at least yearly and provide that to our shareholders.
And your shareholders, of course, are the government.
Our shareholders are the government.
But is there no possibility that one day this might again appear on the budget's bottom line?
All I can tell you, Chris, is that we will be reporting to the government what we expect our internal rate of return to be as the project progresses, and it's a decision for the government in the end to declare whether they're happy with that return.
All right, and you're guaranteeing that costs can't blow out on this project?
No, I'm not. I'm obviously not guaranteeing that we won't have some costs that go up and some costs that go down. What we will be doing is balancing those as the project progresses. But what I can say is we clearly, as a company, will not just continue to build if we see costs increase.
Mike Quigley, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.